Going into the NFL draft in 2018, both New York teams were in similar yet very different positions. The Jets had a fairly successful season under Josh McCown after many prognosticators had them going 0-16. They were looking for a guy in a rich QB class that they can call their man since, I guess, Mark Sanchez. The Giants, on the other hand, were the talk of the town. With an aging franchise QB, they were coming off an 11-5 season where they lost in the wild card round in the playoffs to the Green Bay Packers. The beginning of the next season, they were looking to take steps forward. With a new tight end and many defensive players returning, the Giants were poised to make a Super Bowl run with their long-tenured quarterback Eli Manning. One last run was on the books. Ben McAdoo, who served as offensive coordinator 2 years before getting the gig as coach in 2016, was looking to assert himself as the next offensive genius in the league. But that didn't happen whatsoever. 0-1 turned into 0-2, which turned into 0-5 after the Giants lost to the Rivers-led Chargers. In that game, they lost 3 out of their 4 top offensive playmakers, and things went even faster downhill from there. They did have some impressive wins in the season against the Alex Smith-led Chiefs and the 3-1 at the time Broncos, but most admitted there was much needed change. OBJ was injured, which masked the fact that there were so many things wrong with this team. Of course, we were bad because of injuries, right? Going into the contract year, Odell was battling with his position on the team and was trying to become a leader, or at least more mature. This was after a horrid playoff debut against the Packers that included a dropped touchdown. Oh yeah, and that infamous boat picture. Oh yeah, who could forget that? McAdoo was fired before season's end because he lost the locker room. This is when Landon Collins, now infamously called Eli Apple a cancer. Nothing was going right for the Giants, and again, they needed to make a change. That season, the Giants failed to score over 30 points once, and the blame game started. Who was at fault? Was it Eli? Although most can admit he had a slight decline in play, at least some say it was much more. Many argued he had no one to throw to with all those injuries, and he did have games that he won single-handedly with no help whatsoever. Was it the offensive line? I'll throw up some stats for you on the screen so you can see how really bad it got. How many sacks can an immobile Eli take without getting injured? And he didn't get injured, so props to him. The offensive line was a constant problem after 2011, and it seemed like it was only getting worse. Was it the defense? Again, I'll throw statistics like I did with the offensive linemen, but from third downs to turnovers to sacks, probably to even run game, every single statistic the Giants were getting worse at, and it wasn't working. Nothing that the Giants was doing was working, and they brought free agents in 2016 thinking that they can get the job done, but they couldn't. Me personally, I believe 100% fault belongs to management. The 2016 season was masked by some lucky bounces and beating mediocre teams by a touchdown or maybe even a field goal sometimes. Jerry Reese had draft pick after draft pick in the first round that ended up being busts. Nobody on this team was consistently playing for us years after year after year. They had no consistent players on this team that were staying year after year, and they decided to bring free agents in 2016, and that ultimately led to their downfall. Either way, the Giants cleaned house and hired a new head coach in Pat Shurmur, who was just coming off a 2018 NFC title game and he lost to the eventual champion, the Eagles. They also hired a new defensive coordinator, James Bettcher from Arizona, who was looking to implement his new 3-4 system. And finally, they hired Dave Gettleman, a general manager from the Panthers, who was fired because of his relationship with players. Players like Josh Norman were irate when he just didn't want to sign them because they were too much. Now, the Giants were headed in a new direction. They were looking to get new players to fill that James Bettcher defense. Pat Shurmur was looking to rejuvenate Eli Manning's career, and Dave Gettleman was looking to get rid of all those contracts that made them so unsuccessful in 2017. And that included, yes, Damon Snacks Harrison, who many deemed was a perfect fit in James Bettcher's system, but he knew he had to get everyone out and just start anew. A rookie quarterback bringing in 2018 would have just been horrible. A horrible offensive line, bad defense, and you don't even have enough time to throw it to all the talented wide receivers you have coming back, like Odell, like Sterling Shepard, like Evan Ingram, and they had no run game to speak for it either. The New York Giants found themselves at 3-13 the season, heading into the 2018 NFL Draft with honors and ownership of the second overall pick. Even though they almost blew that by winning Week 17, they definitely shouldn't have won that game because they got lucky they weren't third pick, but I'm going to stop mentioning that. The Jets, as mentioned before, were coming off a season with a lot of hope. It looked like all they needed was a quarterback to compete with the Patriots in the AFC East. Now, realistically, this was a long shot. They did have some talent coming in, like Jamal Adams coming off his rookie year. They did have Leonard Williams, who showed some spurts, although he wasn't consistent. Buster Screen and Matt Forte and a couple other players like Jermaine Kearse, Bilal Powell. And yeah, they had decent talent on this team, but I think there were much more holes than what it was masked for with their 5-11 season. They overperformed even with losses to Marshall, Decker, Revis I think was out, and Quincy Enunwa didn't even play the entire season. This team wasn't good, and they just decided to continue with smart financial decisions and going into 2018 and 2019 as well. Okay, so now I'm pretty sure if you're listening to this video, you care a little bit more about sports than the average fan, but I'm going to explain, start explaining everything too, so you guys can get the reasons behind my opinions in the end. So in 2018, the Jets had Josh McCown, 38 going on 39, going into the 2018 season, and they also had Christian Hackenberg and Bryce Petty, who were projects. Then they signed Teddy Bridgewater in March to a 1-year, $15 million contract with $500,000 guaranteed. Now, this was a low-risk option, but I really wondered why they did this. I know they were going after, like, a lot of free agents. They didn't really know what they were doing as a low-risk option. They didn't know who they were going to get in the draft, but this was kind of confusing to me. They already had veterans, and they had some growing guys in this locker room. Why would you pick Teddy Bridgewater? But there was a lot of certainty of who the top two quarterback prospects were in December of 2017. It was Josh Rosen out of UCLA, and it was Sam Darnold out of USC. Sam Darnold was touted as maybe even an Andrew Luck character. He was a thick and chunky leader, and again, he was touted as being the next big one. He wasn't quite a generational talent, but he was the next thing to it. The consensus is that he'd be able to be successful in the NFL given that he'd sit on the bench and learn how to play better and how to read coverages like a lot of rookies had to do. He only had 2 years of experience in college, and he definitely needed more emotional maturity, but he had all the intangibles. I don't know where this fits, but Sam Darnold's grandfather's name was Dick Hammer. He was actually a multi-sport athlete at USC and an Olympian, which is cool. Anyway, so there was also Josh Rosen, who had all the skills, but some questioned his ability to improve, which has to do with his motivation and leadership in my eyes. He was one of those athletes that picked football over another sport, which was tennis in his case. He was a state champion. After a record-setting freshman year at UCLA, he wasn't really that special for his next years. He often got banged up because of his lack of pocket awareness, getting some concussions, getting some knee injuries. He had an okay arm, and again, he lacked leadership and the rally-the-troops mentality. This was his biggest knockback. His ability to handle the New York media was a long debate, some saying he'd be fine and others saying that he would be in for a rude awakening, since he was from Southern California. Darnold was viewed as more poised and less rattled by pressure, which is what a New York quarterback, especially for the Jets, would need. Again, they didn't have a franchise quarterback for a long time. Now, I know what you're thinking now. Anthony, what about Baker? Yes, Baker was rumored to go to the Jets, and I think they would have taken him if he was available. Imagine, just for a second, imagine if he swapped places with Sam Darnold for a second. I think it would have been even worse if Baker ended up on the Jets and Darnold ended up on the Browns, in my opinion. With the same situation today, Sam Darnold would have a coach that couldn't teach him how to get to the next step, and wouldn't have the pieces surrounding him to be successful. He'd probably have all the offensive weapons, but again, like Baker, no way to get it to him. I know you're probably thinking, oh, they probably wouldn't have hired Freddie Kitchens then. No, I assume that the Browns would have messed it up too. No matter what, they probably would have messed Sam Darnold's situation up if he ended with the Browns. Finally, you may be wondering too, Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, where are they? They were looked at as projects, not so much prospects. They were looking at like 1 or 2 years of development. In the New York media, if Lamar Jackson would have went to New York, he would have been forced to play right away in a situation not prone to his, not favorable to his success. They've been put in places to success in Buffalo and in Baltimore, and that's why they're successful. They've had good offensive linemen, they had good run game, they had good defense, they have good wide receivers to throw to, and that's why they're successful more than anything. I believe if the 3 quarterbacks that we have now were drafted by them, were put in better situations, we'd be saying the same thing about them. But let's go on to my bigger point. After rumors, debates, and speculation, Baker was picked first overall in the 2018 draft because they needed a winner and an underdog. They needed a guy who could rally the troops and give the city of Cleveland hope after LeBron was rumored to leave. I may make a separate series about all the Cleveland quarterbacks, because I think that could be fun, like analyzing Tim Couch and different guys like that. But again, let's focus on to the point of this video. Okay, now that I've listed why the Jets were eyeing a QB in the 2018 draft and who was available, why did they pick Darnold? And why did they love him? I think the Jets were scared to deal with the Giants. One leak with them trying to trade up with the Giants, what the Giants would have done if, the Jets tried to trade with them, created such a huge disadvantage with the Bills and the Cardinals, who were also looking for a signal caller at the time. They had blind confidence that ownership would want to stick with Eli, although new management was just hired. The ownership loved Eli. The obvious trade partner was the Colts. They wouldn't leak anything, and moving up 1 to 2 would have been way too steep, especially with the New York tax the Giants would have caused. The Jets moved up to 3. Before selecting and moving up in the draft, the Jets were pursuing free agents and ideally Kirk Cousins. Todd Bowles would work best with a quarterback from an academic Washington team. As much as you want to say about how Washington is a badly coached team or badly managed team, they have some smart guys coming out of there, like Sean McVay and Jay Gruden and Kyle Shanahan. These guys are smart guys. After Kirk Cousins signed with Minnesota, it was as fast as possible, Operation Best QB in the draft. In my mind, it wasn't Baker or Rosen. Baker had something Favre-esque, but they didn't really trust him, and Rosen was not seen as quite as a fit after he probably needed a lot of pieces to be successful, and the Jets certainly didn't have that at the time. They probably would have settled on him or Rosen if he would have fallen, because they did give up a lot to trade from 6 to 3, but that wasn't their ideal situation. They wanted Sam Darnold. Chubb and Ward were not options at this point. They wanted a quarterback. The Jets spent years and years passing up on top quarterback prospects and settling for talent that fell to them. Remember, like Leonard Williams or Jamal Adams? They either drafted a quarterback like Hackenberg in later rounds or went after a Favre or Fitzpatrick. The last QB they drafted this high was Mark Sanchez back in 2009. If you're interested about finding more about why the Jets drafted Darnold and the whole process, I recommend reading the link, one of the links in the description below. I'll create a special little annotation for it. I mean, I'll have a lot of sources down there, but I'm going to create a special annotation about it. The abridged version is, from what I read, is that the general manager of the Jets, Mike Maccagnan, fell in love with Darnold like Belichick to Garoppolo, Reid to Mahomes, or Peterson to Wentz. The whole Jets organization didn't expect Darnold to fall, and when he did, the excitement was uncontrollable. After meeting with Darnold multiple times and scouting him for 2 years, they thought getting him was out of reach. Sort of like that girl you really like, and she just broke up with her boyfriend, but you're like way down the list. They fell in love with him after his freshman year when he took the job from Max Brown, who started off the season 1-3. He was a sophomore that had way more experience, and the job was actually much closer than what most people anticipated. Most people expected Max Brown to easily win the job, and Sam Darnold almost had it from day one. His first win was against Colorado, who actually won the Pac-12 that year. He mounted an amazing comeback, and the USC won by 4 points in that game. He then rattled off 9 straight wins and made it to the Rose Bowl, where he had his most impressive win when they played Penn State and the Saquon Barkley-led Nittany Lions, and he led a 14-point comeback. This is the game that probably got him drafted. Mike Maccagnan absolutely fell in love with him after this game, and he realized that in 2017, he could pass probably on Mitch Trubisky, Deshaun Watson, Patrick Mahomes, and, of course, Nathan Peterman. He thought, you know what? These quarterbacks aren't great. Let's just punt on the next year. Let's get the guy who falls to us, and let's continue on with Josh McCown in 2017 and then draft a guy in 2018. In 2018, Mike Maccagnan saw the Jets struggle a little bit, well, for most of the season, to be honest, and Sam Darnold continuing to check off the boxes in USC. He was watching his interviews and looking how he dealt with the big game and how he dealt with the media and crediting his players. He was absolutely in love with Sam Darnold and his potential to bring something special to New York City. Baker Mayfield went 1, as I mentioned earlier. Saquon went 2nd overall. Another player had dropped to them, and they were overjoyed. Not in their wildest dreams could they have thought this could happen. Again, read the link in the below. You should really read how they were not expecting to get Sam Darnold whatsoever. So they were extremely happy. Nothing good ever happens for the Jets. Now they're thinking that no longer they would be the laughingstock in New York sports and the NFL. So that does it for part 1. This video is mainly, to be honest, because I wanted to mention why the Jets traded up, who they liked and why, and finally, how Darnold fell right in their laps. In the next episode, we'll dissect the trade and what went down between the Jets and the Colts to see what the Colts ultimately received in the draft and who won this trade. Until then, have a good day or days until I upload the next video, and I'll see you next time. Let me know what you guys think, of course, in the comment section down below, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye, guys.